There is definitely a lag.
It is. Oh, right now. I'm sorry. Do you want to try like counting here? One. I'll say one. You say two. Then I'll go back. Okay. 1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
8,
9.
10.
What do you think? I think that's pretty manageable. It might not be like right on there. Partially, it might not be that I'm lagging, Mary. It might just be that I'm like I stop saying something and then immediately start saying something else. And it might seem
No,
like I'm lagging, but that's just
the
my.
video isn't matching what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. No, the video is probably going to, the frame rate's going to dip quite a
It
bit.
is.
And yeah, that's
That's
yeah.
normal.
Yeah, the frame rate will dip, but I think our audio, like the audio is really what's
Yeah,
what's
important.
what's the most important part. So
Okay.
here, I'm going to go ahead and do a countdown.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Long View, a podcast that takes a closer look at the games people play. Ugh, gross, terrible. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Long View, a podcast that takes a closer look at the games people play. I'm hosting The Long View by myself for tonight because unfortunately TC had to go take care of a medical emergency. So it sounds like things have stabilized and he's doing okay. And I just really hope for a quick recovery for everybody that's, there's just so many people getting sick right now. I'm recording this in just kind of the tip end of flu season, which is just hanging on like crazy. Anyway, so thoughts goes out to him. And my name is Joe Sallin. I apologize in advance for this being a little shaky, but I'm really excited tonight to talk about an extremely popular and easy low entry game where it's not too tough to get involved, and a lot of people play it all over the place. And to do this, I've brought an extremely special guest. That was one of the first people that I remember taking in board game media from when I was in my first days. I used to listen to previously the Dice Tower podcast used to have my guest as a contributor, and her name is Mary Prasad, known as diceychic on Board Game Geek. Mary, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thanks so much for joining. Yeah. So we're here to talk about one of Mary's favorite games, the trick-taking game of Tichu. So just if you've never actually got a chance to meet Mary, I'd like to say check out the things she does. She did an amazing convention write-up for the Board Game Geek Con, and that was posted. If you look in the news section on Board Game Geek, you will be able to subscribe and find whenever something comes out news-wise, check and see. Maybe Mary is behind it. So awesome job on those, Mary. And great job.
You can actually find me if you go on the right side, there's a column, and under their contributors, you'll find my name. So you can click on my name and find all my articles.
If you click on news, I'm looking now. Okay. And then
over to the right.
Okay. Over on the right. Okay. Let's see here. All right. So yeah, just do what she said. And you'll be able to see all the things that she's put out there as a part of the news team there in Board Game Geek. And I was saying this earlier, whenever I have notifications on Board Game Geek, I usually go through and 9 times out of 10 I click mark read, but I don't do that for the news. I think it's really great. Really appreciate the service that you all provide. It's also very well produced and fun to read. It's quite a read. It's something where, don't go there unless you have some time to spend, because you're not going to want to just glance over these articles. Like specifically your con write-ups are ones that I want beginning to end. You want to eat every little bit. It's like a fine wine. You're not you want to in sips, and you got to be able to appreciate it. So great stuff coming out of there.
I appreciate that.
Well, so Mary, we're here to talk about the game of Tichu.
Yep.
Before we do that, thanks to the sponsor of the Longview, Game Surplus. Check them out at gamesurplus.com. Also, reminding you, because Carmen, the Carmen and Elaine own Game Surplus. Carmen is by trade pharmacist, and so he said, "Get your flu shots." That means if you're listening to this 2 years in the future, Get your flu shots. I don't care when you listen to this. You get your flu shots. Herd immunity. Hashtag herd immunity. So also buy board games at gamesurplus.com. Back to our game of the night, which is Tichu, a trick-taking game. Mary, would you please tell us about how you got introduced to Tichu, and what about this game is so incredibly well respected, considering that other trick-taking games seem to be out there but just don't get the same love as the game of Tichu.
Wow, I don't even remember when I started playing. It's been many, many years. Gosh, I remember first playing it, and it was, yeah, I really liked it, and then I really hated it. and then I started to appreciate it, and figured out there's so much depth in the game that it basically takes a long time to learn. I'm still learning stuff. There's so much you can do, and there's all these different situations, and of course there's a little bit of luck. But it's an interesting game. It's kept me interested all these years. It's probably the only game I've played that much, and I really love it.
No, that makes perfect sense. I've having been recently introduced, it is one of those games where you will continue to learn how to actually play your hand. I feel like the reason for this is almost that like the possible ways you can play a hand are much, much higher here in Tichu than they are in most other trick-taking games. In other trick-taking games, you're going to it's like you're going to sort your cards out by suit. Those suits are going to be really important. They are generally you're going to have a certain sort of hierarchy, and you're going to want to try to play, as high as you can to the top and just play the strongest card, the ability hopefully to take a trick. Whereas in Tichu, no, not that simple. You're not going to find cut and dry here. So if you like the comfort and simplicity of and I would say kind of like the limitations of a regular trick-taking game, you're not going to find that as much with Tichu. So just, as an overarching theme, I think we're going to be going into topics that sort of elaborate on how Tichu's not hard to learn, but to master it. I mean, is anyone
actually? Long time to master. I don't know anyone that's really mastered it. Even the best players I know, when you ask them, they're like, no. and there are a lot of really, really good players out there that I love playing with. And it's just, there's so many different situations and so many things that can happen. You're always sort of exploring it. It's just depth. It's just got a lot of depth. It's great. So yeah, you're right. It's easy to learn, but it just takes a long time to master. If it can be mastered.
Yeah, just scratching the surface. So let's go back. For folks that haven't heard of Tichu, or that maybe don't even know what the term trick-taking game is, you're going to be partnering up, and there's lots of trick-taking games out there. A lot of times these will be regional. I feel like, like I grew up playing the game of euchre. Maybe someday there will be a long view on that, but I feel like a lot of it, as long as we don't bring up Tichu, we'll be okay.
I grew up on Pinnacle, so.
Yep, and then once you play Tichu, it's like when somebody suggests playing euchre, you're like, I've got this other game.
I'd rather be playing Tichu.
I wonder, how much of Tichu's background is shrouded in mystery, like games like euchre and Pinnacle and other like canasta, because the thing is, when I read the rules, because I actually learned how to play Tichu from the rules, it seemed like it was almost intentionally misleading and full of cheeky suggestions that this game was some sort of a it's not so much a game but a cultural movement.
Yeah, well, there's one of the opinionated gamers. If you go over and look up Tichu on there, I think it was Chris Rye. I'm sorry if I got the wrong person, but I think it was Chris Rye wrote up a whole thing about the background of Tichu, and it's pretty interesting. But it was based on sort of an older traditional game, but it's not, from what I gathered, it isn't that old. It isn't, it's just based on it.
Board Game Geek certainly doesn't say so. It only says 1991, which,
Yeah.
considering that was like almost saying like this was coming in the years BC here.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's a relatively new game as far as this configuration, but it's based on something older, which some other games are as well.
It's a really fascinating. It's Chris Rye, like you said, a very fascinating read here, and it looks like he consulted you before writing it.
Yeah, he did. I contributed. There's probably a whole section that I wrote.
Very cool. So it's not that old of a game, but it's based on some fairly older structures. Does that sound right?
Yeah, sounds right to me. Did you pull up his article?
Oh yeah, I've got it here. But the thing is, like, I would love to hear you explain to me, like, so from a totally uninitiated player's perspective, let's say, like, from the perspective of somebody who really loves hobby games and sees this sort of outlier on the Board Game Geek Top 100. It's like, all right, here's this game that has 10 pages of rules. It's a Euro game. There's all these other things. Like, Tichu kind of stands alone in being a trick-taking game that is just so widely respected. So coming from that sort of a perspective, what is it, how do you play Tichu, I guess? And also, let's just stop there.
Well,
slow myself
actually
down.
What you're kind of going there for, what makes it unique? I'll just answer that first before we go into the rules. At the beginning of the game, you are actually passing one card to your opponent, one each to your opponent and to your partner. So there's this little bit of shared information all around the table, and gives you a little bit more control maybe over something in your hand. I'm sure you're getting 2 cards back from your opponents, but you also know now what's in their hand, something about their hand. And I think that's unique to Tichu. Other games have passing, but usually it's not to your partner and to the opponents. It's not the same. So I think that's one thing that makes it unique.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'd never even considered that instead of you passing 3 to your left or 3 to your right, you're doing 1 to everybody on each turn. And it was also full of a cute reference. It's like, when you pass cards, you have different formations. Do you want to do the tree, or do you want to do like the line? And it felt very zen, maybe.
About that. Passing is an art. I will say that. What are you going to communicate to your partner with these cards? The most obvious thing is, you pass a dog and I probably should talk about the game first before I go into more of this. But if you pass your partner a dog, then that means you have a good hand usually. So you want them to support you. So, that kind of thing. But why don't we go over the rules real quick, and then we can talk about more specifics.
Sounds great. So how do you play Tichu?
Okay. Well, first of all, the deck is basically your standard 52-card deck. Although the Tichu game by Rio has different suits. They're, instead of your, if you can see these, instead of your hearts and spades and stuff, you have swords and stars, swords, stars, jade, and pagodas. So it's kind of like a Chinese theme thrown on. But basically, it's your 4-suit 52-card deck. Now, the difference is there are these 4 extra cards. These are the special cards. And I'll just explain these one at a time in just a second. Let me go over the basic part of the game. And I will say there is this really cool, where's the camera? This really cool little handout that you can get, little player aid on Board Game Geek. And for new players, this is a great summary of the game. Basically, it tells you what are your basic plays, your special cards, and something called bombs, which are very important in the game. If you know poker or other traditional games, you might be a little more comfortable with the plays. So, your typical plays are singles, pairs, 3 of a kind, full house, and straights. But there's also one other thing thrown in that's kind of different, and that's consecutive pairs. So you can play a string of pairs like threes, fours, and fives, and they can be as long as you want. You can go 3, 4, 5, 6, pairs, but they all have to be consecutive. That's the only difference. And whenever somebody leads with something, the rest of that round, everybody else has to play the same configuration. So if a singles led, that round you're going to play singles. Their only exceptions are the bombs. So I'll explain those in a minute. So basically, you're going to go around the table. You can pass and you can come back in. But once something's played and it's gone all the way around, that person who's on top wins the trick. And they take that, flip it over in front of them. There may be points in it. Points, when you start out playing the game, I would say don't worry about the points so much. Just learn how to get rid of your cards, basically. Get the lead, keep the lead, and empty your hand. And then later on, start worrying about the points. The more important points in a lot of the Tichu games are going to be the actual Tichu calls. And what that means, a Tichu and a Grand Tichu are basically bets that you're going to get rid of all your cards first. They're either 100 points for regular Tichu or 200 points with a Grand Tichu. So the way you start the game is you're going to deal out all the cards as the dealer. You're going to start out by dealing everybody 8 cards. And then you're going to continue to deal out the last 6 to everybody else. Now, everybody's going to look at the first 8 cards, and they're going to decide whether they think those 8 cards, based on those 8 cards, if they can call something called a Grand Tichu. That means based on these 8 cards, I can go out first. If you don't think you have that good of a hand, which is pretty rare, you're just going to pick up the rest of your cards and sort them. Regular Tichu is a lot easier. They're based on all your cards, and the round can go around, however many times you want, as long as you don't play your first card. When you play your first card, that's when you call Tichu. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to do that if somebody's about to go out or if somebody did go out. It's a little late then. So, but you can, a lot of times, a person will sit back and watch to see if maybe they can get rid of a small card. If they have the opportunity in the first, round to get rid of some junk, and maybe that'll make it a Tichu hand. But without that, you might not have, confidence in your hand. So anytime before you place your first card down on the table, you can call Tichu.
Wow. But once Tichu's been called by one player, it's like
anybody can call.
So you can actually have multiple Tichu calls. I didn't even, it's
oh yeah.
Whoa. So
that's where the real fun is.
Dueling Tichus, huh?
Yes, especially if it's your partner.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's like it's a 1 in 4 chance, right? It's not like when I compare it to other pretty big calls, like I compare it, back to euchre, you can go alone, but you have to first of all play without a partner and take every single trick for it to really be worth your time. So it's like, it can happen, but it's rare. Yeah. I feel like at Tichu, though, like the way that you're describing Tichu, like you get quite a bit of information, as well as, being able to know what your first card play is going to be can give you quite a bit more information, right?
Yep. And I've seen, there was a game where the opponents one of the opponents had called Tichu, and the guy who called it kept letting the other guy play and get rid of his cards till it got to the point where he really had, he basically was going to take the rest of the tricks with what he had in his hand. And so he ended up calling Tichu so they wouldn't just fail. And he went out.
Nice. When his partner's already called it, you're like, yep, I can't help.
And he kept glaring at him like, when are you going to play? It was pretty funny.
They'd cancel each other. That's funny.
Yep. So
essentially a 100-point bet, right?
What?
It's a 100-point bet.
Yes, 100-point bet, basically. Yep. Or you lose 100 if you don't make it. So it's a big swing.
And the game allows you to go negative at the beginning,
right?
Yeah. So you can.
Oh yeah, you can go negative. Sometimes a lot.
So yeah, so when it comes down to it, like getting rid of all your cards first is kind of like, I'd say, maybe a central drive in the game, because if you're not getting rid of your cards first, you're losing the opportunity to get the Tichu points of like 100 because you know, the main ways of scoring points, like I think you've gone into like kind of the more exciting and you know, really where you get almost more leeway for how to call Tichu in this game, and having multiple people be able to call it, and the game still kind of like carry on in a fairly similar manner regardless of who's called and how many people have called. There's a lot of points that can happen. And would you say what percentage of games that you play?
I'm sorry, what?
What percentage of games that you play have a Tichu called? Like I should say hand, not game.
Well, that really kind of depends on the level of the players. I think that, and also the aggressiveness of the players. I was looking through, I have a little Tichu journal here. So yeah, I've got like years worth of data here.
Is that the standard issue or is this a homebrew?
This was somebody at the gathering made these and sold them. I don't think they have them anymore, but it was a really nice Tichu journal. Had a little sheet on how to use it.
Wow. So
this
is the official issue.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice. So I've been keeping track of them at a lot of different conventions. And some games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5. Ooh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One game.
Bold.
So, and some of those are yeah, there can be a lot. And then there's some games that there's only like 2 or 3. So yeah, well, yeah, sadly there was one that there was 3, but they went out in 1, 2, 3, 4 hands. So
whoa.
Oh, that was me and Martin. Not even the other players did not do so well.
You might have a little experience on them, maybe. Just sensing.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't remember who those 2 were that we were playing, but
they might not have had the Tichu journal to keep track.
Yeah, that was it. But it's kind of fun. I like to have my friends keep score in it and then sign their names when they're done. So, so it's kind of like a little memorabilia for me too.
Very cool, like a way to scrapbook your games of Tichu.
Okay, so I should probably continue explaining. Okay. We have, let's see, so we know that the hands, and when you get your cards, we know how to call Tichu. Then the first thing we're going to do is pass cards to the left and right opponents and across the table to our partner. Usually there's a convention involved, and I should probably explain bombs because this is one of the things that's important. A bomb is either 4 of a kind or a straight flush. And straights are always at least 5 long. They can be longer. So a bomb is the only thing that can be played out a turn. And it can be played on everything except for one special card, which is the dog. So in order to not create a bomb, a 4 of a kind in your opponent's hand, we tend to give them the crappy cards. So a lot of times 2s and 3s are passed. And if I passed a 2 and my partner passed a 2 the same direction, and the guy, or girl had a pair of 2s, they would get a 4 of a kind, and it would be a bomb, a 2 bomb. So in order to prevent that, we have a convention. You don't have to stick to it. The typical convention is odd to the left and even to the right. So you'd pass the 2 to the right and the 3 to the left. So that's just a convention. The other thing I always keep in mind when passing is the color, what color am I passing? Especially if it's not just those small cards and I'm looking at maybe a 5 or a 6 or a 5 and a 3. The flush bombs can happen. A lot of times if I have only one red of those colors, I might not pass that card. I might pass a higher card that's a different color that has maybe a 1 or 2 higher and lower, or, so there's less chance of a flush bomb, because that can happen. Tichu hands, there tend to be like some pattern a lot of times. It's kind of weird. So you'll get maybe lots of triples one hand, maybe a lot of pairs one hand, maybe a lot of straights one hand. And it seems like even bombs, a lot of times if you have one bomb, there might be another one out there. It's just kind of how the cards go. It's kind of strange like that, but that'll happen a lot. You know, somebody will play a straight, and then another person will play a straight, and another person will play a straight, and it's not unusual.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
okay,
but you do have to sort of like following suit in this game, which you'd mentioned that the suits here have been changed from traditional card suits, but the suits really don't matter aside from just
just
the
for the
fact,
flesh bomb.
Yeah, just identifying for like you said, the flesh bomb. When when a lead happens though, like it just sort of determines the entire structure for that round.
Yes.
So yeah, everybody has to either follow it or pass. It's not like
or play bomb.
A lot of climbing games sort of have a hierarchy from the beginning to the end, but really like, Tichu, you don't have that necessarily because if a single card is played, it doesn't matter how great your hand is full of, like all these pairs. It's like, if you want to play, you have to break up that pair.
Yeah. And that's actually one hallmark of a good player is the ability to rearrange their hand to make the most of the situation. And a lot of beginners make the mistake of being married to this three of a kind. They don't want to break that up when it's actually in their best interest to break it up.
Yep. So sometimes it just isn't meant to be.
Yep. Okay, so you know about passing and then playing. Like you said, when a person leads, you have to follow the pattern, basically. Let me just go over the special cards real quick. The hardest one, for some reason, I don't know why, to understand is the dog. It's like two dogs. You must have the lead to play it. It's going to be led, and all it does is passes the lead to your partner. That's it. So the important thing here is it cannot be the only card in your hand or you won't go out. Or if you leave yourself with a 2 or a 3 or a 5 and the dog, you will not go out, most likely.
Terrible.
If you get really lucky, you might, but probably not. So you want to leave yourself something high, at least an ace, in order to use the dog, to get the lead and use the dog and pass it, the lead to your partner. If by chance your partner is out, it still goes to that position and then continues around the table. So the play will go to that person that was your partner. And then if he's out, then the next person, if she's out, it'll come back to you. So it just comes around. The next thing is let's see, we'll talk about this guy. The dragon. Dragon is the most powerful card in the game, considered by most. It's worth 25 points, but most of the time you have to give it away if you win a trick with it. If you bomb it, you get to keep it, but if you win a trick with it, you have to give it to one of your opponents. The whole trick. It is the highest single card in the game. That's it. So you can play this over an ace, and you can play this over an ace and a phoenix, which I'll talk about now. The phoenix is a wild card, basically. You can play it with other ranked cards, and it can become another ranked card. So it could become an ace. If you play it with an ace, you can make it a pair of aces. You can actually make it anything. So you could make it let's say if you're playing step pairs and you're missing one of the step pairs, you can stick that in there as one of those. It's really great for filling in a straight. You might have this gap. So you might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. This can be a 5. So you can play it with the ranked cards and it becomes whatever you want it to be, basically. You can also play it as a single. As a single, it is half a point higher than what was played before it. So this would be not a great use of it.
No.
It would be 2.5. But
if you're going out,
ace,
though.
Yeah. Oh, and so, sometimes that might be what you're, going out on. But this would make it an ace and a half, playing it over an ace. So the only single that would beat it would be the dragon. Okay, once the dragon's out, this becomes your next highest card over an ace. Bombs, of course, will beat these. If you play it by itself, it's a 1.5. So the next card, the last card, where did I put it? There it is. The last card is the Mahjong, the 1, and it is a 1. So this cannot beat this played by itself. So this is the low card. The actual lowest card in the game is considered this one, just because you have to delete it and it can't be played with
It
anything
just has
else.
like
And
no
it's
value.
with no
The
points
dog.
and all that. Yeah. But this guy here is a really low card. The person who's dealt this is the person who's going to lead first. So that's how you determine who goes first.
But they don't have to play it first.
They don't have to play it first. But if they do play it, and usually you do want to play it first because it's so low, you can either play it as a 1, in which case a 2 will beat it. Or you can play it as part of a straight, and it's the lowest straight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many cards you want to play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, if you want.
Is it considered as having its own color that cannot be part of a straight flush, or
no special cards can be part of a straight flush.
Okay.
Straight flushes, all bombs have to be natural.
Okay.
You cannot play the Phoenix with it. You can't do anything like that. So yeah, this guy here also allows the person playing it to make a wish. This is where, when you pass those cards, you really want to remember what you passed. There's a couple reasons for that. One of the reasons is this guy. You can make a wish. You typically wish for what you passed to the left player. So, and there's a reason for that. You don't always. You may do a Hail Mary and try to wish an ace out of their hand or something like that. The problem is that this wish stays in existence. It's out there until it's fulfilled. So if I wished for a 5 and the next player doesn't have a 5, cannot play a 5, it goes to my partner. So I might have just screwed up his straight. So yeah, it's a little dangerous to just wish for whatever, and typically that does mess up your partner.
It can really make you an enemy, a frenemy on the other side.
Yeah, might get them you might get some dirty looks or worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I usually remember what I passed to the left and wish that, and also keep an eye out for the exact card that I passed, because if by chance I wish for a 3 and I pass them a jade 3, a green one, and they put down a red one, I know they still have a green 3 in their hand. So I try to remember that. And as far as remembering cards, you also want to remember what you were passed by your partner, and play that last. So the cards that you get from your opponents, you want to play first, so you get the information out of your hand. But the card that's from your partner, you want to keep in your hand and play other cards. So if you had, for instance, 2 aces and one's red and one's black, and your partner passed you the red one, you would want to play the black one, so they know that you still have their ace in your hand. See? Gives them more information and helps them plan a strategy. This is very, very much a partnership game. Very much. And the better you play with your partner, the more success I think you're going to have. So
no semi co-op.
No.
It's a team game.
Yeah. Your partner, and there are couples that don't get along, like my husband and I as Tichu players. Maybe not the best Tichu player match. We're great everywhere else, but he's actually come a long way. I will play Tichu with him nowadays.
So he couldn't match your level.
Oh no. It was more 2 aggressive players playing and clashing.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not
just
so
two
good.
Play styles. Gotcha.
So you wanna be able to play aggressively when you have the cards, and you want to be able to sit back when the other person has the cards, or give them a chance. So if your hand basically is not a Tichu hand, you want to work with your partner and make their hand better. So pass them a really great card. Don't trash up their hand. Keep the dog, to help them out. The dog is a very, very powerful card. A lot of beginners don't realize how powerful it actually is. You give that away, you're giving them a weapon. So, I mean, if somebody called Grand Tichu, yeah, they usually get past the dog.
Here,
try to mess them up, but sometimes it backfires on them. Sometimes they'll go out 1-2 because that dog was passed. So you're taking that chance as well. So yeah, where was I? I think I got most of the rules out now. I got all the cards. We got the bombs.
Yeah, the main thing, I'm not familiar. Is it the 5s and 10s that are worth points?
Oh, points. Yes, that's a very good point.
Good points.
The kings and the 10s are worth 10 points. The 5s are worth 5 points. The dragon is the most points, is 25 points. And the phoenix is minus 25 points. But remember, you have to give away a trick if you win it with the dragon. So you're giving away that 25 points plus whatever else is in the trick, because it's very powerful. And the phoenix, you're going to get the minus 25 when you win that trick, again, because it's very powerful. There are things you can do to try to alleviate it. You can try to give it away. But typically, you don't want to, unless it's like your last card or something, because it's going to win you the lead, hopefully. And it's more important to get rid of your cards and be able to get something like a Tichu with that card. The other thing, at the very end of the game, the last person, you play until everyone's out of cards except for one person. That person, it kind of sucks to be him, because they have to give away all their cards. All the tricks that they won go to the person who went out first, and all their cards go to their opponent. And this is also a good point when you are giving away the trick that you won with the dragon. You want to take a look at the opponents and see who you think is going to go out last, in hopes that you will win it back at the end of the game. So, usually it's the person with the most cards, or possibly the weakest link. So
yeah.
There's
like, it's kind of like, you want to be the first one to go out. Like, that just by itself is a positive thing, because you're going to get all the cards from the player that lost. But at the same time, you don't want to be last. So it's like, even like the tension doesn't just immediately, go away as soon as a player is out. Like, there still is like that sort of passing the buck, hoping you're not going to be the last one in.
Oh, it's even more than that. There's something called a 1-2. If the two partners go out before either of the other ones do, it's 200 points. So,
and typically, how many points do you play to? Because this can, and any number
1,
of hands can add up to.
Yeah, usually play to 1,000. 1,000 points.
Okay.
Typically, that's 8 to 10 hands, I guess, something like that. It can go fast, because if there's a lot of Tichu 1-2s or Grand Tichu 1-2s, that's a 400-point swing if they win. Yeah.
3 games, right? You said this one only lasted 4 games.
Yeah, I had one that lasted, I think it was like 4 or 5 hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one was 6 hands. Yeah, it can go fast.
For sure. So, but if you're not playing the Grand Tichu, if you're just playing it on points and you're all playing very conservatively, without those 200-point or 100-point bet/bonuses, then it's just 100 points in every hand, because you're talking 40 points from kings, 40 points from 10s, 20 points from 5, and then the dragon and the phoenix cancel each other out and are kind of a net 0. So there's 100 points to go around, but then a lot of, like, as you said, because Tichu is something that one person's going to go out first, and there's only 4 of you. So it's not like, it seems, it's attainable, but you're fighting tooth and nail to do this, and it's like your decisions are not over once you've been like, okay, well, I've got this. Like, there are literally, in the game of euchre that I come from, like, you could literally lay down a hand. You can be like, I'm going alone, and I lay down my hand.
That has happened.
Oh, I suppose, but like, that would be if you had like what, like a straight or just a handful of bombs, or
1 through ace, 14 cards.
Get the lead though. That's another thing. Like, I've had all of my cards in a straight, but I have not been able to get the lead.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's one reason why it's good to have a partner.
Because nobody is going to just be like, oh, hey, here's a 13-card straight. And I'll be like, oh, well, here's my 13-card straight that's 1 higher than yours. I've never seen that happen, at least. I
haven't seen that happen either. I have seen the 14-card straight, though. That, with the 1 and boom, it was down. In fact, this one girl, it was really cute. She's like holding her hands, and she's really, thinking, well, I guess I'll call Tichu. And she lays down all the cards but one. And then she looks at it and she goes, oh, and throws down the ace on top. She was holding that back, just in case.
Wow.
But she had the 14 card straight.
The 14 card straight is just the insta win. So there is like a lay down your hand, but it still ain't over because whoever goes out last is still important, right?
And that actually might not even have a lot of points in there's 15 points in that straight. No, 25 points. So there's like 75 more points up. And if they get stuck with the Phoenix, they just lost those 25 points. So you can actually, call Tichu and get negative 25 points. And a good thing you call Tichu, otherwise you'd be negative. So it can happen.
The way that, because you've got the card that is worth, it's such a powerful card, but it's worth negative 25 points. I mean, you're talking about, this is like an oil that just greases all the hinges in your strategy, but it does so at a cost. Yep.
Yeah. So there's strategies about that. And, and some people, play to get the points, but most of the time it's a lot more important to just go out. Now, if there's like 40 points sitting there in front of you, you're going to be pretty tempted to take them if you can. But, the other thing is, like, if you take those points and you wasted your best card and you're not going to go out, you're just going to give those points to someone else. So, you got to think about that too. And again, it's a partnership game. So, you want to help your partner as much as possible. If they're getting a lot of points, you have the dog, you want to help get that over to them. So, get the lead back to them, or play to them. If they're passing on singles, play pairs, try something different. So, there's a lot.
You're constantly in tune with what your opponent is playing. Now,
your partner,
your partner is playing, of course. Like you've started here with how much strategy there is. Just first of all, you deal out 8 cards, and that's like just slightly more than half. And then you have to look at your hand and be like, okay, are you gonna essentially like shoot the moon? I would say like the Grand Tichu is sort of like the shoot the moon, because I feel like there's that sort of, there's a lot of elements of uncertainty, and then like the penalty is just so huge, but. So you got to think at that point. And then once you look at all your cards, at any point you can call Tichu. So you may as well wait until at least your first turn before you really decide, because you're not getting, gaining any points, right? Would you say that if somebody calls Tichu before their first play, would an experienced player kind of frown at them and be like, are you sure? You sure you don't want to wait?
There might be reasons to call it before. I mean, some people will call it before the pass because they want something from their
So then
partner,
the pass.
So you could do it before the pass, but then again, you're taking a chance you're going to get, the dog maybe past you. From an opponent, so, there's those trade-offs. If you have the dog, then, you can pass that to your partner and, give them a heads up right ahead,
Yep.
So there's reasons to call Tichu at different times. Maybe, your partner, I don't know, if they're playing a lot of cards or something like that, you might want to hold off to see how their hand is going and maybe not call Tichu. It all really depends on your
When is
cards.
the deadline? When is the cutoff?
It's just, you can't play a card. Before you play a card, once you play a card, it's all over. Then you can't call Tichu.
So you can watch a lot of cards.
Yeah, you can watch and see what's going on, and seeing if, like if you have an iffy hand, you might want to say, okay, well, I think I can go out, but it has to be played perfectly. So I'm going to hold back and see if I can get rid of, if maybe I have like a 2 and a 3 and a 4 or something that I can't play with anything else. And let's say, it goes around and the person before you plays a 2 or a 3 and you can get rid of the 4. So it's one less crappy card. Or maybe they play a 2 and you can get rid of that 3. That might push you over the edge. So, now I think I can do it, that kind of thing. Or maybe the dragon was played out. You got lucky and you just needed that out, Who knows? It all depends on what you have in your hand.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so much like what you're describing here is just the relative openness of this system. it's never really over. Like you're never really forced to play a card.
Right.
With the one exception of that wish, that wish
Yep.
must be fulfilled, right? If you have the
Yeah.
ability to fulfill a wish, you must fulfill it. Like you're not given a
Yes.
choice, correct?
Yes.
But aside from that, anytime cards are being played, you have the option of passing. Like you can
Yep.
always pass. But
Yep.
the point of the game is to go through your cards and be the first one out. So every
Yep.
time that you pass, you're doing it at, once again, a cost
Yep.
to your own.
That's it. I always think of this, know when to hold them. That always runs through my head, that song. Like,
wow. And
you're
it's talking about the actual play of the game, not just the, wow. Yeah.
So you gotta know when to hold those cards, and sometimes you have this really great hand, you're itching to play it, but you gotta wait because you just need one more thing out of your hand or something. Or if the other person, maybe when your opponent's called Tichu, and you need to maybe hold back and wait to play that dragon and surprise them, or a bomb. Wait until they're down to the point of no return, basically. Let's say, they played out a lot of cards and you want to stick them with one in their hand that might be a 2 or something they're hoping to go out with. You kind of got to know when to hold that and when to play.
Yeah, for sure. Like a ill-timed bomb would, just the most wasted thing. How often would you say, we've described what a bomb is, either 4 of a specific number or a straight flush of at least 5 cards. How, in a typical, let's say out of 10 hands, how often would you say you'd see a bomb occur in your hand?
In my hand, sometimes they appear really often, and sometimes you won't see one the whole game. So, yeah, and usually that's when the opponents have all the bombs.
Oh, yeah.
It's random. That does, it's. You try to maximize your chances of getting a bomb, like especially if you had 3 2s, you don't want to give away your 2s. Things like that. You try to maximize chances. If you're missing one particular card, you might get it during the pass, especially if it's a low card. So don't give away those other cards, but you're taking a chance of keeping a bunch of crap. Stuff like that. It's all those decisions.
For sure, yeah. Like it's really interesting how what you mentioned in terms of passing cards, how you're focused on, like, hold on, I don't want to give my opponent a bomb. I feel like it's pretty clear here, Mary, that you're at a next level of Tichu, right? Like I'm still making sure I know all of the rules, but you're like going a step past, like, okay, you want to get rid of your bad cards, and your bad cards would be like, if you don't have anything else, you might get rid of a 2. Because, if it's all by itself. But you're like, hold on, let's look at all the cards that are in my hand, and let's make sure that whatever I'm passing is, like, 2 suited and just terrible. Like, I want to make sure that this is something you look at and go, course.
Yep.
That's sort of aggressive. I can feel the aggressive player coming out there. So when you play, though, you're always allowed to, as a lead, whoever's leading, essentially the suit in this game, if you will, is like the structure of cards being played. So what I mean by that is if you play a single card, it's like you're saying, okay, only single cards. If you play a pair, only pairs.
Yep.
And so, yes, these are tough to get, but what would you say that specific, when you lead, when you're considering what type of card, card sort of structure suit to lead, how do you make that decision?
That's all basically experience. When you're trying to figure out what to lead, you got to look at your hand, think about your partner, think about the opponents. Did they call Tichu? Did they not call Tichu? Are you going to call Tichu? It's all these things that kind of to consider. If you have, usually most of the time you'll probably want to get rid of garbage. But getting rid of garbage also allows the next person to play over your garbage. So they can get rid of garbage. So, playing a 2 or a pair of 2s, they're probably going to get rid of a 3 or a pair of 3s. you know. So especially when you get down to, you know, having only a few cards in your hand, that's when you really want to consider playing those low cards or high cards, or, you know, what's the situation with your partner? You know, do they need a lower card? You know, if you play the lower card, is the guy going to go out next to you? Do you need to play a high enough to go over them, but low enough to go under your partner? That kind of thing. Uh-oh, I think I lost your sound.
Do you feel that there is a sort of a rhythm to leading? Do you feel like what you expect from other players, do you expect to see like they played one set of pairs, you expect them to have more than just one pair? Okay.
Yeah, usually if they're playing a pair, you know, you want to be able to capture that pair again, so you'll have a higher pair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So kind of form a pattern, unless you have consecutive pairs, in which case you're just like, here you go.
Yeah. And those are typically hard to beat, but then again, there are hands where everybody has consecutive pairs. Mm-hmm. So it's really kind of odd how that works out. That it seems like when one person or two people have it, then there'll be 3 or 4 of those out there.
Yeah. Like, well, and that's kind of how I felt like in the little experience that I have. I'm playing this on a few different nights, is that whenever I felt like I had a great hand, it was because we all had a great hand. You know, I feel like when you're like 4, you know, when you've got all of the numbers, but not any decent straights or anything like that, I feel like everybody's sitting on just crappy hands, you know, because all of the cards are going out of this deck. And there is those special cards that kind of almost allow for a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah.
You really do see. Oh yeah. You do see though that sort of, you know, like I feel like whenever I've got something here, the rest of the table, because they're working with what's left, with the scraps that are left, very rarely is it like that one person is just sitting on the best hand ever and the rest of us are, you know, crying and crying and moping.
It does happen, but but most of the time it's distributed wealth, so that's kind of nice.
For sure. So we've talked about how open this can be. Now, do you feel that this openness can lead to a little bit of like, I mean, how much would you say about this makes it like difficult for newer players to play like remotely okay? Like, would you say, I feel like, you know, there's just other trick-taking games, I feel like have just that sort of like, okay, ace of clubs was led. Everybody play your club, right? It's like, it's so automatic. Like you don't have the ability to pass. Yeah. Like how often and how often should you pass? Like you've said, you know, hold them and fold them. So this openness is, I think, what really as it's like
basically experience. You know, the better players are usually the ones who've played lots and lots of games because they've seen all these situations. So yeah, it's that whole depth, exploring the depth of the game. Just when you think you've seen it all, something else happens.
For sure.
I remember one time I was playing with my usual partner. I play a lot with Ted Alsbach. He's Bezier Games. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Big tall guy. He says he's 6'100", but I don't believe it. But he is pretty tall. Yeah. So he and I play a lot together, and I just remember this one time. Another really good Tichu player was William Atia. He did Kalis. He's a really good Tichu player. He was standing behind my partner and watching him play. And my partner puts down some play, and the look on William's face, I'm like, what do you do? and then my partner's like, what I do? He says, oh, yeah, I'll tell you after. And then, you know, after that hand was played, he's like, he picks up his cards, like, what should he? And he rearranges his hand. And he goes, oh yeah, that would have been better.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
But it was so funny, the look on his face. He was like, oh, like, why did you play that?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious to think like, you know, when you frown upon what you see somebody doing, but it's like it comes down to experience, like you said, you know. you know, but I've seen it happen in you know, a game that's much more simple, euchre. I have seen, you know, players get kind of like, you know, upset at a lot of times. The worst type of upset you can get is when it's between partners, because that needs to continue to work. Like if you're mad at your opponent, just like, okay, beat them, whatever, you know, it's their job to try to beat you. So deal with it. But when it's upset at your partner, that's when it kind of becomes a little bit, it can be a little like, I don't want to say contentious, but kind of, you know,
well,
have you ever played?
Sometimes it's deserved, and I must complain. There was one time when Ted, I called Grand Tichu, and he's going to probably write into the show or call or something. Just to explain.
The bus here, Ted. Hopefully,
I called Grand Tichu, and my partner passed me the dog.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it made it so that I absolutely could not go out.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He was just like, oh, but we have to go 1-2. I'm like, but we're not going to go 1. The important one is not going out.
That is awful. That's hilarious.
Yeah, the opponents thought so. So funny.
Yes, absolutely. What also really interested me about what you said is that, you know, you're talking about one of the most respected board games of all time, Caylus, the designer of Caylus, William Attia, is a Tichu player. Like Ted Alspach, a very respected designer of Suburbia, Castle of Mad King Ludwig, is a Tichu player. Like, how often do you think, like, is this that type of game that just, it brings, because it's one of those that's simple to get into, but involves like that higher level of skill? Is it, you know, how do you play Tichu? Do you play, like, are these in tournaments or?
I have played in a number of tournaments. I don't know. I enjoy it. I like playing the game. I play it all different ways. If there's a tournament, I might play in it. There's one at BGGCon, which I've played in a couple times, but typically I'm so busy interviewing and working that I can't, you know, devote the hours to playing in the tournament. If I got knocked out right away, then it probably would be okay, but usually doesn't happen. So
yeah, you're too good to play in the tournament. I get it. What's crazy to me though is just, I mean, yes, it's a game. Maybe it's because it's been around for as long as it has, but like, you know, this is the type of game that it just blows my mind to think that designers, you know, can have that type of respect, you know, for this type of level of game. Now, why do you think it is that this is so popular within, you know, by like established designers? Why do you think those guys like it?
I mean, it's just, like I said, the depth of the game and the experience. A lot of people like that rich experience game. There's a lot of strategies, a lot to explore. You know, there's a reason it's my favorite game. I get bored of stuff easy. I mean, we have like, I don't know, 2,500 games. So yeah, I get bored easy.
You've seen it all too. So
yeah. And they're running me out of house and home. But yeah, please buy our games. My husband Snooze Fest has them for sale. Go look at our for sale games and trades.
Get a little plug in there here.
Yeah.
The Longview Podcast, sponsored by Mary Prasad and her husband, selling their games on Board Game Geek. The Board Game Geek Marketplace.
But it's you know, it's just, there's so much, it's so interesting of a game. I've not gotten bored of it. I love playing it. I did go through, like I said, that little bit of hate for a while. Could
you explain that a little bit? Like what was going on?
That was near the beginning when, you know, basically I said, yeah, this is all luck. I can't stand this game.
Oh.
But, you know, you don't get the nuances until you've played it, and you have to play it a lot. So, yeah, you know, I liked it, like I said, at first, but then, you know, I started playing it, and it wasn't doing well, and it just looked like it was a bunch of cards, and I didn't get it, and then eventually it clicked, and then I was like, oh, and when it clicked, it was basically playing like a lot of these better players. Tom Lehman, who did Race for the Galaxy and stuff, he's an excellent player. I love playing against him or with him. with him too. Zev Z-Man, formerly Z-Man, now with WizKids. He also a real good player. A lot of designers, publishers. We get together and play, and it's a lot of fun. The games are almost always different. There's always something that happens. There's lots of stories to tell. People take pictures of their hands. They're like, "Oh, you guys have to see this when we're done." You know? Yeah, I've done that too.
Wow. So what's crazy is that when you're describing this, it so much echoes my experience prior to entering the modern tabletop hobby as just, like going to a family event, because it's the same sort of story, but with euchre. And euchre had the type of limitations that made it easily digestible by, players that are not really that interested in a game having depth and lots of decisions. It's, they almost want the comfort of feeling like, well, I lost this one because I got screwed by the cards. It's like, this was a really, really hard and impossible hand to win. Hey, that's the way the cards fall. There's nothing we could do about it. It sounds to me like this is almost like Tichu is like the game designer's trick-taking game, because everything comes back to that immense amount of depth because of how open the system is. It still has the same hallmarks of like, what a crazy hand, how did this work out this way? But it has all these little balancing aspects to it that keep it sitting in this like equilibrium where it just continually gets played.
Yep. Yeah, and you definitely have that card luck there. And, somebody might get all the good cards, but you're playing over, 8 or 10 hands. So usually with good players, that'll even out, and, you'll bounce back another round. So, yeah, it's fun to play. I really love it.
Okay, I want to come back to a question I asked you earlier, because I asked, how often do you get a bomb? And how many? So in a game, how often do you feel like bombs occur?
Yeah, it's very strange because they can happen. Like I said, often you can have 3 bombs in a hand, and then you might not see one for several hands. So it's really it's kind of random.
Is it something that you count on? Or is it something that usually takes you by surprise as a player?
Yeah, you look for them when you pick up your cards, and they're very helpful. And like I said, you want to mitigate the chance of other players getting bombs from what you pass. But you want to maximize your chance of getting a bomb by what you're keeping during the pass. So there's that. And sometimes that works out. It's kind of interesting how often it actually does work out when you take a chance on something. You might not see it. You might not see a bomb, and there's other cards. There's other ways to play. So having a bomb doesn't mean you're going to win. I mean, you could have a great bomb, and if you don't have the rest of the cards, it's not that good.
Like timing is so huge with bombs as well, because you want to almost, maybe by design, you're being surprised by bombs if they're being played right. Because if you're not surprised and a bomb comes out, you're going to be like, why did you play that now? Are you sitting on 3 bombs in your hand or something? Like
yeah. And sometimes you'll even want to bomb the dragon, because of the extra points. But you might not be able to, because the idea you want to get rid of all your cards to go out first, or stop somebody else from going out first. And if you use it up for that, it might be helpful. So, and basically what I'm talking about is like, if you had both the dragon and a bomb, you would probably want to take 2 tricks with that, not bomb the dragon and keep 1. You know what I mean?
For sure.
The other thing I want to mention is splitting up cards. For instance, an ace bomb, or maybe even a king bomb, you might want to split up. You definitely want to split up the ace bomb unless you have an absolutely fantastic hand, because that is 4 cards that are high for taking singles, which is typically what most people play. So, and maybe even a pair. So having 4 aces in your hand is great, but you likely won't play it as a bomb.
Okay. Wow. I never, just the idea of splitting up a bomb just threw me for a loop there for a second. But you've described how that would be the right choice. Yeah, because especially when you know that, the dragon will win one of these. Yeah. But aside from that, as long as there's singles being played, I can cut off I can cut off all of my opponents and my partner, unfortunately, from being able to play any more singles right there. 3 of the 4 times singles are played.
Well, that's not unfortunate because you're partners, so he wants you to do well, or she wants you to do well.
Unless they're passing you the bomb
when you
call, or the dog when you call Grand Tichu.
Yeah, well, there's always that oddball player, right?
There can always be maybe it's a social experiment. Maybe the player decided that turn they wanted to see how this went over. How can you react under duress?
Yeah. Yeah, there was also the time where he must have been half asleep or something when I called Tichu. Everybody else heard me. He went out. I was letting him play, and then he kept playing until he went out. And I'm like, what are you doing? I called Tichu. He goes, no, you didn't. And the opponents both said, yes, she did.
He's a game designer. He's getting overworked. You're playing. It's at conventions, but yeah, that's that's hilarious
over there.
Oops.
So now every time I called Tichu, I was like a pound on the table, get his attention. I called Tichu.
So yes, what an interesting game, packed full of all these stories, and it's it's such a cheap game too. Like,
yes,
there's nothing to lose here. You're talking about, like, if you buy the Rio Grande edition that I have, comes with 2 sets of cards. Like, literally, you could play 2 separate games of Tichu. So essentially enough for you to have a game night of 8 people playing 2 separate games of Tichu, and it's like $10 list price.
Yeah, I've gotten them for $5. So yeah.
It is so close to it being like a standard deck of cards, but it has changes that make it just, that really every little change adds so much to the depth of the game without being that difficult to really understand it, even as a new player.
Oh, by the way, I do want to mention, I don't recommend the Tichu expansion.
Oh yeah,
just pretend it doesn't even exist.
I thought that was fairly recent, wasn't it?
Yeah. I kind of have nightmares still about playing it.
What it seemed to me is it was like 55 cards that were
crazy.
All like.
It's
special...
like making Tichu into Flux. It's
oh
yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
For those of you who like Flux, you might like this version of Tichu. But yeah, it made it really crazy.
Yeah, so don't recommend that. Well, I couldn't even track it down. It was hard to find like an English copy, but maybe it was for the best.
Yeah. Yeah,
I didn't even have that in the show notes here. I just kind of ignored it because I remember like when I saw people's reactions to it, they were just so immediately and universally critical. I was like, no thanks. You can confirm that was the right choice.
Yes, it was the right choice.
All right, well, that'll be the easiest expansion discussion we've ever done on the Long View. Just don't play it.
I will recommend, however, Chimera. So it's a 3-player game that basically scratches the same itch. And it's done by a friend of mine, Ralph Anderson. He did a great job with it. So if you're looking for a 3-player Tichu feel game, it's different, and if you're learning Tichu, I wouldn't play Chimera because it'll screw up your Tichu game. It's alike enough to, you get it, but the plays are different enough that it'll mess you up trying to figure it out. But it's great because it's got sort of a 2-on-1 thing. So whoever wins the bid, the other 2 are basically going to be against you.
That sounds pretty cool. It sounds like it might kind of up that sort of the feeling of like almost every hand's a Tichu for somebody.
It's pretty cool. I enjoyed that. So yeah, I'd recommend that one. I've heard Haggis is good, which is supposed to be like a 2-player type of Tichu, but I haven't played it, so
okay.
I
own that one, and I tried playing it a couple of times, and it played fine. it definitely seemed like it had quite a bit of depth to it. Unfortunately, I don't have nearly enough experience to be able to say whether or not it scratches that same sort of itch, because this was like probably 3 or 4 years ago. And then my experience with Tichu, which was so like overwhelmingly positive, was actually taught to me by a non-gamer friend. And that was like only like a year ago. And, we continued to play, and we were for a little while there, we were scheduling like Tichu nights awesome. Until life got, it was, that's that type of game though. It's the one where it's like, like you don't have a game night, you can have a Tichu night.
Sure.
It's kind of
you could rotate and play with your same partner, or you could play with different partners. It's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. So to what degree would you say though, do you usually pretty much roll out whenever you're going to a game night with your game of Tichu with you, or because it seems almost like this is
very
like,
portable.
Yes. But we might need to have a bit of an intervention here. There are so many games out there. I do
play other
somebody
games.
Pulled out Tichu. Mary's gone. She's not playing anything with us tonight.
I do play other games, and a lot of times we play regular Euro board games all day long, and then we pull the Tichu out at night. There's the party games we have, and the Tichu games. There's like Time's Up and Tichu.
Yeah, so it's kind of goes with your party games thing, which is interesting because though you're playing it for like the depth of the strategy. It's interesting that it goes with that box, and I understand it.
Yeah,
but I don't know why I understand
guess it's because you can play it and socialize and talk, and even though there's a lot of thinking involved to play it really well, I wouldn't recommend a tournament at night, but but it's for casual play, just kind of playing that, not take it too seriously. It's a lot of fun to play at night because you can socialize with it.
For sure, yeah. It's like any trick-taking game. The rules melt away very quickly, and you're able to sort of carry on a conversation while still thinking. Though I would have to say, during the learning games, I'm not talking all that much. I'm like sitting there like, it's tough. Like, I love the amount of decisions that are in a given game. Like, to me, like that sort of decisions, and the more the decisions and the lower the rules overhead and the time that it takes to play a game, or time it takes in between your turns. Like, if you can get that, to more decisions and less time that you have to sort of wait and invest to get to those decisions, that's, to me, is a very positive thing. And Tichu is among the best for like just giving you amazing amounts of decisions and, other elements that you look for in trick-taking games, but without being difficult to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, you can socialize, you can actually talk and play. It's not, it's not like a lot of games where the table's pretty quiet because somebody's thinking and it's like really heavy, and it's got a lot of depth, that yet you can still socialize. That's one thing I really like about it. Really, once you got the rules down, you may not make the best choices all the time, but you can kind of play and talk to your friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. do you ever wait? Hold on. How serious are we about this, Mary? Do you ever start a conversation knowing that your opponent is going to be lost in that conversation and then making subpar moves?
Might be a tactic.
All you got to do is just say dice are the best thing that ever happened to Euro games, and then Joe is losing this game. You'll see him start passing the dog on his partner's grand Tichus.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I feel like I'm starting to get to the point where I want to call these Ted Allsbach moves. So I've met him in person, don't know him super well, but he seemed like a really sweet guy. So I'm sure he'll understand.
He's a great guy. He is. He's very funny too.
That sounds like he brings that sense of humor to the games of Tichu.
Yeah, which is one reason I like playing with him, because he always makes me laugh, even when I don't feel like laughing.
When you want to just be mad.
Yeah, he'll make me laugh at him anyway.
Well, yeah, just how enjoyable an experience can be. And I think that, I felt like before I played Tichu, I felt like I wanted somebody to show me how to play Tichu. Like, I didn't want to have to like learn it from the rules. I felt like it was going to be one of those, like any trick-taking game, it's like you want to play it with somebody who has an idea of how the game feels. Because
it is good. You asked me, one of your questions was about learning it, and I did have an answer for that.
Okay.
If you have someone you know that's a good Tichu player, it is great to have them teach too. That is the best way to get to know the game. And I would suggest playing probably 2 hands up, face up. So you can see how they're playing, why they're playing, and ask them, why did you play that? Why did you play that? And have them explain to you, because the thought process behind it is usually pretty interesting, and will help you, basically. And of course, as you play the whole game, you're gonna have lots of situations where you're asking this, or maybe they'll offer you at the end, you shouldn't have played this, or this is what you did wrong, you should have played that, or lots and lots of Tichu players rehash the game afterwards. Even expert players, they rehash the game afterwards to try to learn from it. So
that does sound fascinating. I was taught in a very conducive to learning way by this, like I said, a non-gaming friend. He actually taught me in 3 rounds, like 3 hands, and it was like he took some things out. I think he took the special cards out, and he took...
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was like he took out some things, and I forget exactly what his strategy was of teaching it, but I felt like it was amazing, It was a really great way to like just get in and sort of figure it out from my perspective, because I think, I think that the strategy that you're talking about for learning the game sounds amazing. It sounds like you're going to really be able to sort of you're going to bypass a lot of those sort of like, it took me 10, 15 games to figure out that this is why you always do this. This is like a current in the game. But I can see, both of those ways of being excellent ways to enter in, to sort of teach you.
Yeah. I usually kind of throw them in. I explain the rules, I give them a cheat sheet, and then we play a couple hands face up. Usually by then they feel comfortable enough to pick up their cards and play. But they'll still ask lots of cards. And usually what will happen is one of the players, if they went out, will go over and help them. So they'll get a little more help at the end of that hand. And that seems to work pretty well. The other thing I was going to suggest is, if you don't have somebody willing to teach you, there is a really great app, a Tichu app. Do you have it? Have you?
I actually don't have it. No, it's news to me.
It's written by Steve Blanding, real nice guy. He did a really great job with it, but it does have some shortcomings. I was one of the beta testers. The AI, I mean, you can only spend so much time working on an AI for an app. I mean, to really do it right, you'd actually have to have, you see the depth we've been talking about. An AI would actually have to learn the same way like a human would, and to code that up and have it learn, it would just take so long that, what is it, like $4 or $5 or something? It's a pretty cheap game on an app. Not going to make him any money if he does that. So, and having to keep it up. So the AI isn't the best. It makes mistakes, but it does have a really great tutorial for it. And you can learn the game and play it and kind of make your mistakes there. But I wouldn't take their play as really good play, because like your partner will play over you sometimes, which is a big
frustrating.
Frustrating. Yeah, especially if you call Tichu and the partner, Becky, we call her Becky. We hate Becky. We'll play over you with a crappy hand. We'll play over you, steal the lead, and then play a crappy hand, something like a 3 of a kind, and then she won't take the lead back or give it back to you. Just like she'll lose lead to your opponents, and it's like, oh my God, what are you doing?
What it kind of makes me think is, how long it took them to develop like an AI that was capable? It was such a big deal when Deep Blue, the AI, beat, the chess master, the chess championship. And I'd heard them talk about how Go is just like so many more levels of complexity difficult to actually train an AI, where they actually like switched the way they were developing it to make it so that the AI would learn from its mistakes. It would essentially keep playing itself over and over and over and over and over, learning from its mistakes. And this is like, just one AI trying to beat like the best game, the best master. And I would say that like, to bring this analogy back to Tichu, chess is like the sort of euchre, the simple trick-taking game where a lot of it is going to be programmed by the way the cards are dealt. Whereas this is the go of those trick-taking games, because the options are just so open, so endless. Yeah. And like you said, not worth a $4.99 app or any amount of money that it's going to turn around, especially if it's only going to be able to be appreciated by the truly great players out there. Because most of us out here, I don't know, Mary, if you've realized this, but most of us out here, we're Becky's.
I don't think so. Play it and then let me know if you're a Becky.
I won't tell you, because then you won't want to play with me. I will know that I'm a Becky, and then I will ask to be your partner just to see whether or not you cut me breaks like you did tell Ted Alspach.
Yeah, that's one way to get hit.
Yeah, I know. That's why I wear long sleeves. Well, this has just been such an... Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I used to work in AI. That's actually what my master's is in, AI and machine vision.
Wow.
And I was just looking at something one of my former professors posted about machine teaching another machine to learn, and it was getting smarter than the original machine. Now, is that not creepy or what?
That is. It's like, oh, there was a game that kind of took that, like when a machine is able to improve itself, where does it stop? I think ultimately every one of those stories ends in, and then the machine decided that humanity was in the way. Exactly.
It's the beginning of the end.
But Becky's going to take over all.
Yeah, I don't think Becky's going to survive.
Becky's like that level 1 Mortal Kombat opponent, the one that just sits there and doesn't actually even press a button.
Yeah. Well, the only thing good is that the opponents are just as bad.
So you're stuck with Becky, but they're stuck with,
that's each other.
Yeah. Oh boy. So, is there anything that we have? Is there any more dimensions we need to look at? Any more angles on Tichu?
I'm just looking. Let me see my notes here. We covered pretty well, I think. Carmine games already went over that. Yeah, how to play.
We did go over how to play, yeah.
Bombs, let's see. We covered everything, didn't we? Did you get all your questions?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I was using those questions, and also I think you just were working off those same questions and addressing them as well. So yeah, it's been an excellent episode. It's been one of those that's left me feeling very motivated to seek out the game, to try to keep playing it. And more than anything, what I'm going to be looking for, because I didn't realize how much at conventions this is that type of game that can just bring people together. The same thing it does at family reunions with my family and euchre, though I still haven't told them that euchre is... I love it. Totally love it. But it's been replaced.
Yeah, usually at conventions, a lot of times if you just basically hold up the box, you'll get some players come running over. Sometimes there'll be fights breaking out.
So very popular. Not going to be going away anytime soon, regardless of how many terrible expansions they come out with, or ridiculously dumb AIs. It's best played by 4 players that, in a table, 4 players that, it's going to bring friends closer together. And I think it's also going to be the start of many friendships, as great trick-taking games have always been.
Yeah, and the other thing is compatibility with your partners. Probably sort of touched on. Yeah, you may or may not. You know, if you play with a player and you're kind of rubbing each other the wrong way, just switch partners. So a lot of times we'll do that. Like if we're playing, usually play a couple games. You know, we'll just play one, and if we didn't quite mesh, we'll change partners and try somebody else, and then you know the game you might mesh better with that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I was wondering, you know, like, you know, how important would it be, like, if you and a partner ran, you know, just ran over your opponents, would you then try to like kind of mix it up so that way?
Yeah, I definitely do. And typically game? I am the one that gets stuck with the new player.
Well, I feel like, Mary, maybe people know you know the game.
They've kind of caught on. So I don't mind, actually. I don't mind playing with a new player. They'll learn a lot, and you know, it'll help balance out the teams. Ideally, if we have new players, I try to make it 2 new players and 2 experienced players, and we'll each take one. That way they both learn, and they both don't feel like they're the only ones making mistakes or feel silly. You know, there's 2 people asking questions. That way it's not just a one. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good way to teach it too, is having, you know, 2 new players and 2 experienced players.
Yeah. Really cool. So there's a way to enter into this, you know, what I would almost call is like like I said, we talked about this earlier. It's almost like this: once you go Tichu, you never go back.
It's true.
Some
people have gotten hooked.
As it says in that rule book, which, by the way, is one of the most hilariously written rule books. It is a way of life. I've
actually tried it. I was supposed to rewrite the rule book, but I never seem to have time. It's just one of those things I keep looking at going, Yeah. Every now and then I get a question from Jay too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not all too surprised, because it's just difficult to teach one of those games from a rule book, because so much of it is, you know, it's how it works when it's being played, and not so much like, you know, these are the rules cut and dry. So
yeah, they're the mechanics of the game, but there's so much more.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, just like you said, easy to learn. And I hope people will come on board and try it out. I know after I did a few of those segments on the Dice Tower, I had a lot of people come up to me at conventions saying that I was the one that introduced them, and thank you so much. They love Tichu, and so I'm glad I was able to get a lot of new players into the game.
Yeah, I can't think of a better person to have on this, you know, doing the long view of Tichu. You know, Mary, it really is like, it's one of those games that I think you've done it justice, and I don't think that's. Yeah, I don't say that lightly. This is definitely a game that needed somebody who could come on and talk about it from all the angles that you have covered. So I thank you so much for coming and joining. Yeah. Oh man, it's just been such a, to me, it really inspiring episode to hear the intricate workings of the strategies behind it. I will never again lightly toss a card to my opponent thinking, I hope that I can get this, because that's so much. I'm such a selfish player. I'm like, okay, hold on. I hope I can get this. But now I need to be thinking like, wait, before I give this, is this going to give you another 2 to add to your collection? You know, are you counting on this too?
Yep. Yeah, I've had a couple people say I was very frustrating because I'm not passing them what they want.
You pass these 7s. Who passes a 7?
Oh, I have. I've passed 10s. I've even passed a jack. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts, let me tell you. But sometimes you just can't break up that, you know, bunch there.
Well, and they're not going to be counting on it either. They're going to be like, what's this here for? And then you see them, like, when you pass the card and you see your opponent like 3 or 4 times rearrange their hand before you even start playing cards. Like, you know, you did something right then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
thanks so much for joining here. Yeah. And This has been the long view of Tichu, which I hope everybody out there gets a chance to play and find 3 other gamers. Make it that Sunday night or Saturday night game that you can get together with. It's a great couples game as long as you don't end up at each other's throats. Very very much a danger. And thanks so much once again to you, Mary, for joining on this episode of Tichu.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, take care, everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Long View.